I found the photograph while sorting through 3 plastic tubs of family pictures my daughter had been asking me to deal with for years. At first, it looked ordinary. My late wife, Mary Ann, stood beside a picnic table in the backyard of our old house in Indianapolis. My sister Elaine was there, along with our neighbor Carl Benton and 2 couples from church. On the back, in Mary Ann's handwriting, were the words Labor Day, 2004. The date made sense until I noticed the red maple behind garage. It had already been cut down by Labor Day. I knew because I was the one who paid to remove it after lightning split the trunk in July. My name is Dennis Ward. I was 68 when I found the photograph, retired from repairing commercial laundry equipment for hotels and hospitals. For most of my working life, I opened machines people assumed were simple and found the opposite. A dryer that stopped heating might have 1 bad wire, or it might be the final symptom of 3 smaller failures that had been ignored for months. The photograph felt like that. I turned it over again. Labor Day, 2004. I remembered that holiday clearly because I had not been home. I had spent that weekend in St. Louis replacing motors in the laundry room of a convention hotel. The job ran late, and Mary Ann was angry because I missed our annual cookout. At least, that was how I remembered it. But the maple tree was alive in the picture. That placed the photograph before late July. There was something else. On the far left, almost cut off by the edge of the print, was the back half of a dark green Dodge van. It belonged to my former business partner, Raymond Pike. Raymond and I had not spoken since May of that year. Our partnership ended badly enough that I had spent 20 years telling people we were never in the same room again. Yet his van was parked at my house, and on the glass patio door, reflected faintly behind Mary Ann, was the shape of a man wearing a white work shirt with dark suspenders. I owned exactly 1 pair of suspenders like that. I stared at the reflection until I could no longer pretend it belonged to someone else. Raymond and I had worked together for 15 years. We were not related, but for a long time he was closer to me than my own brother. We repaired industrial washers, ironers, extractors, and dryers across Indiana and Ohio. I handled electrical problems. Raymond could listen to a bearing for 10 seconds and tell you whether it would last a week or a year. We also disagreed about almost everything. He liked taking chances. I liked procedures. He would bypass a failed safety switch long enough to finish a job. I would shut the machine down and explain to an angry manager why 300 beds might not get clean sheets that night. For years, the difference made us a good team. Then it became the reason we stopped being one. In the spring of 2004, a hotel laundry manager in Bloomington accused our company of damaging a large commercial washer during service. The repair was expensive. Raymond insisted the machine had already been failing. The hotel threatened legal action. Our insurance eventually handled it, but not before Raymond and I turned on each other. He claimed I had written notes that made him look careless. I accused him of performing an unauthorized repair. Our last argument took place in the shop. He said, "You'd rather be right than be fair." I told him to get out. By June, we had dissolved the partnership. Mary Ann hated the way it happened. She liked Raymond and his wife, June. The 4 of us had taken vacations together and spent dozens of Sunday afternoons around that same picnic table. After the split, Mary Ann refused to choose sides. I thought that meant she stayed neutral. The photograph suggested otherwise. I called Elaine first. She was 72 and living in Fort Wayne. I asked whether she remembered a cookout at my house before the maple tree came down. Which one? The one with Carl and Raymond. Silence. Then she said, "You found the picture." Not what picture. The picture. I sat straighter. Why would that matter? Elaine sighed. "Dennis, I thought Marion got rid of it." "Why?" "Because you asked her to." I looked again at the reflected man in the patio door. "I don't remember asking that." "I know," she said. That answer bothered me more than anything in the photograph. Elaine would not explain over phone. She said there were details she might remember wrong, and that I should speak to June Pike before deciding what the photograph meant. I had not spoken to June in nearly 20 years. She still lived in Indianapolis. When I called, She recognized my voice immediately. "You're late," she said. "For what?" "Whatever made you call." I told her about the photograph. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Come by tomorrow." June's house looked smaller than I remembered. Raymond had died 6 years earlier from complications after heart surgery. She kept a photograph of him on the mantel, older and thinner than the man I knew. I showed her my picture. She touched the corner where the green van appeared. "That was taken in June," she said. "Which day?" "The 20th. I knew the date. It was Raymond's birthday. I remembered spending that day in Cincinnati on an emergency repair. June shook her head. "No, Dennis. You came home that afternoon." "You're sure?" "You called Raymond." "I did not." "You asked him to come over." I felt irritation rise. Why would I do that 3 weeks after throwing him out of the business? June looked at me carefully. "Because Marianne told you what she found." I waited. June went to a cabinet and brought out an old photograph album. Inside was another picture from the same backyard gathering. This one had been taken from a different angle. Everyone was seated, including me. I was at the end of the picnic table, leaning forward with my hands clasped together. Raymond sat across from me. The photograph was not blurry. There was no question who I was. I had been there. The first thing I felt was not surprise. It was embarrassment. I had told my daughter, my co-workers, even myself, that I never saw Raymond after our partnership ended. That was not true. I asked June, "What did Marion find?" She said, "The service report from Bloomington." The damaged washer had been the center of everything. I remember the machine, a massive front-loading unit in the basement of an older hotel. The drive system had failed after we serviced it. Raymond blamed metal fatigue. I blamed the temporary bypass he installed on a vibration sensor. The report filed with our insurer included my handwritten notes. Those notes made it appear that Raymond had acted alone. June said Marianne found my original field notebook in the trunk of my car. In it, I had written something different. "Ray wants a bypass sensor." I agreed for test only. "Must restore before leaving." I had approved the bypass. Raymond forgot to restore it, but I knew it had been installed. That meant I shared responsibility. "Why don't I remember the notebook?" I asked. "Because you destroyed it," June said. I laughed, but she did not. She told me the backyard gathering was not really a cookout. Marian had invited everyone because she was afraid Raymond and I would not meet alone. Elaine came because Marian wanted family there. Carl came because he had occasionally helped with our bookkeeping. The photograph had been taken before the conversation turned ugly. "What happened?" June folded her hands. Raymond apologized. "For forgetting the censor?" "For that, and for blaming you afterward." That sounded more like him. I asked what I did. "You apologized too." I almost smiled. "Then why did we never speak again?" June looked at the photograph. "Because later that night, something else happened." She would not tell me immediately. Instead, she asked whether I remembered being exhausted that summer. I did. After the partnership collapsed, I took every service call I could get. I traveled constantly, slept badly, and drank more than I admitted. Not enough to disappear into whole missing days, but enough to live many weeks without examining them closely. June said the backyard meeting lasted less than an hour. Then Raymond left. I followed him. Where? The old shop. That gave me the next place to look. The building still stood on West Morris Street, converted into contractor storage units. The current owner let me into the section that had once been ours. On the back wall, beneath several coats of paint, I found 2 shallow holes where our company sign had been mounted, and beside them, scratched into the concrete, were 4 words in my handwriting. "Ray told the truth." I had no memory of writing those words. I photographed them and sent the picture to Elaine. She called within minutes. "You need to stop pretending you were in St. Louis that weekend," she said. "That was Labor Day." "No, I'm talking about June." "Then tell me what happened." Elaine hesitated. "You had what people used to call a breakdown." I disliked the word immediately. She explained more carefully. "After meeting with Raymond, I returned to the shop alone. Marianne found me there after midnight. I had been drinking. I was pulling old service files from cabinets and tearing some of them apart. I kept saying I had built my career on being the careful one. And if the Bloomington report came out, everyone would see I had signed off on the same shortcut I condemned Raymond for taking. That isn't a breakdown, I said. No, but what happened next scared us. I had not slept properly for several days. I became confused about which jobs had happened when. I insisted the Bloomington failure occurred after Raymond left the company, even though records proved otherwise. The next morning, I remembered fragments. Marianne took me to our family doctor. He told me to stop traveling for a while, stop drinking and sleep. There was no dramatic diagnosis, no injury, no mysterious condition. I was exhausted, ashamed, and using denial so aggressively that everyone around me began speaking carefully. Within weeks, I returned to work. The family stopped mentioning the backyard meeting. I built a simpler version. Raymond had acted recklessly. We split. I never saw him again. I didn't forget by accident, I said. Elaine answered softly. Not completely. That was the first turn in the story I had not prepared for. I had been present in the photograph. My memory was incomplete because I had spent years reinforcing the version that protected me from admitting I had approved the shortcut. But one question remained. Why had Marianne written Labor Day on the photograph? She knew when the maple came down. She knew when Raymond's birthday was. She knew I was home. Writing the wrong date was not a casual mistake. It moved the photograph into a weekend when I was definitely out of town. It gave me an alibi for a gathering I had actually attended. Someone had changed the history on purpose, and that someone was my wife. I went through the rest of the tubs. Once I stopped looking at faces and started looking at backgrounds, the timeline became clearer. A picture of Marianne and Elaine at the kitchen counter showed the same blue paper plates from the June gathering. A photograph of our dog lying beneath the picnic table showed Raymond's shoes near the edge. None of those pictures had dates. Only the group photograph did. Labor Day, 2004. Marianne had labeled the one photograph most likely to prove I had seen Raymond. I called Carl Benton. He was 80 and living in a retirement community near Greenwood. He remembered the meeting. Marianne wanted witnesses, he said. Witnesses to what? To you two making peace. That surprised me. According to Carl, Raymond arrived with a copy of the original service record. He admitted he left the bypass in place. I admitted I knew about it. We agreed to correct the insurance statement and split whatever professional consequences followed. But that never happened, I said. No. Why? Carl's voice changed. Because Raymond stopped you. I thought I had misheard. He spent months demanding I admit responsibility. He did. Then he stopped me from doing it? The day after the meeting, Raymond called Marianne. He said he had spoken to the hotel manager. The hotel had already replaced a machine and settled a claim. Correcting the report might reopen everything and could cost both of us our certifications with several major clients. Raymond decided to take the blame for the bypass. Why would he do that? Carl said, because he was leaving the trade. I remembered hearing that Raymond later worked in warehouse management. He had less to lose professionally. But that explanation felt incomplete. Carl agreed. There was also your daughter. My daughter, Lisa, was 17 then and preparing for college. Marianne feared that if my business collapsed, we would have to sell the house and pull Lisa out of school. I said, Raymond didn't know us that. No. Then why? Carl replied, because you had already done something for him that you forgot about too. June told me the rest. 3 years before the Bloomington job, Raymond's wife had developed a serious autoimmune illness. She missed work for months. Their medical bills climbed. Raymond began taking extra service calls. One afternoon, he made a mistake on a hospital dryer installation that could have cost him his position. I caught it before the machine was started. Instead of reporting him, I corrected the wiring and told our client the error was mine. I remembered fixing the dryer. I did not remember taking the blame. You never told me. I said. June gave me a tired smile. Apparently you were easier forgetting the good things. Raymond never forgot. When the Bloomington dispute threatened my career, he saw a chance to repay what I had done. That explained why he changed his mind. It did not explain Marianne. June had one more thing. After my exhausted, drunken night at the shop, Marianne visited Raymond alone. She asked him not to contact me again. Not for a few months. Not until I was stable. Raymond agreed. Months became years. I asked June why he never tried later. He did. When? Several times. I felt the old anger return. I never heard from him. Because Marian asked him to stop. That was the second truth. The false date on the photograph was not created to protect Raymond. It was created to protect me. Marianne believed that if I remembered the June meeting, I would also remember the corrected service report, my breakdown at the shop, and the fact that Raymond had accepted blame partly out of loyalty to me. She feared I would reopen the claim, confess everything, and destroy the business I was rebuilding. But there was more than practical fear in it. June said Marian felt responsible for pushing the two of us together before I was ready. She thought the meeting broke you. June said, "It didn't." No, but she believed it did. So she helped me maintain the simpler story. She dated the photograph to a weekend when I was away. When I asked about Raymond, she said he had moved on. When he called, she intercepted the messages. She protected my career. She also cost me my friend. And because Raymond had once protected me too, he accepted the silence. I was angry at Marianne for several weeks. That was difficult because she had been dead for 5 years, and anger toward the dead has nowhere useful to go. I drove to Crown Hill Cemetery twice and sat in my truck without getting out. Eventually, I brought the photograph with me. I told her everything I wished I had said, that she had no right, that protecting me was not the same as deciding for me, that I would have wanted to see Raymond again. Then I admitted I did not know whether that was true. In 2004, I was proud, exhausted, and frightened of losing the identity I had built around being dependable. If Marianne had handed me the real story, I might have rejected it. Maybe that was what she feared. June gave me a small envelope Raymond had left among his papers. Inside was a copy of the group photograph. His version had no false date. On the back, he had written, "The day Dennis almost forgave me." Almost. That word stayed with me. Raymond did not see himself as a martyr. He knew he had made the dangerous mistake. He knew I had approved a shortcut. He also knew that after our meeting, I had not reached out. Marianne may have blocked some messages. She did not stop me from making a call of my own. I never did. That mattered. The photograph had started as evidence against my memory. Then it became evidence against Marianne. By the time I understood the full story, it had become something less comfortable. Evidence that several people loved each other badly, in different directions. Raymond protected my career, because I had once protected his. Marianne protected my sense of stability, because she believed I was close to falling apart. I protected myself by accepting the version that asked the least of me. None of us got everything right, and the years we lost were still gone. June and I visited Raymond's grave in early spring. She brought flowers. I brought the photograph. We stood there for a while, without saying much. Finally, June said, "He would have complained that you waited this long." That sounded like him. He would also have been glad you came. I hope she was right. A month later, I invited Elaine, Carl, June, and my daughter Lisa to my house. I made hamburgers. Nobody called it a reunion. We looked through the old photographs and tried to identify dates without trusting what was written on the backs. There was more laughter than I expected. Lisa asked why I had never told her about Raymond. I said, because I thought the story was simpler than it was. That was enough. I did not need to hand her every regret. I kept the original photograph. It sits now in a small frame on the shelf above my workbench. The red maple fills the background behind us, healthy and green. Raymond's van is visible at the edge. Marianne is smiling at whoever held the camera. And in the patio door, faint but unmistakable, I can see my own reflection. For 20 years, I believed that reflection proved my memory had betrayed me. Then I believed the false date proved Marianne had betrayed me. Now I look at it differently. She was trying to hold together a man she loved using the tools she had. Raymond was trying to repay a debt I never considered a debt, And I was trying so hard to remain the careful one that I could not admit how careless I had been. I still wish Marianne had told me the truth. I still wish Raymond had ignored her and called one more time. I wish I had called him first. Those wishes do not cancel each other. Sometimes, when the afternoon light hits the glass, my reflection appears over the reflection already caught in the photograph. For a second, there are two versions of me standing in that backyard. The man who was there, and the man who spent years believing he wasn't.